Hi, this is Julie from Silver Birch Studio, and today we're going to create our very own wildflower garden. So grab your iPad and your Apple Pencil and let's go. To start off with, I'm using a watercolor paper texture document here today, and this is free. There's a link down below to all the freebies, so be sure and check out that link and download this paper. We had used this previously in one of my other videos. And it's a great way to add that authentic watercolor look. When you open up the document, you'll see a paper texture at the top and layers to paint on beneath. We're going to go ahead and duplicate these quite a few times just to give us some layers to work on. So that'll be good to start. I'm going to start on the bottom layer here. I'm going to go up to the brushes. I'm going to be demonstrating this with the Watercolor Magic DuoColor Bleeding Edge Blooms brush today. And we'll use a couple of the other brushes as well, but we'll start out with this one. If you don't have this, you can use any watercolor brush that you like, or you can use the free DuoColor Brushy Brush that I gave away in the last tutorial. So that gives you some options to work with. So that's our brush. We're going to go over to our color palette now. The color palette is free as usual. We're going to use the first pairing here. So I'm going to select this pink, and then I'm going to click on the second box here and click on this darker color. I want the darker color to be selected up in the circle there. All right, so now for sizing, we're going to start out with the brush at about 7. And we're going to light pressure create some stems for our flowers here. 2-finger tap if you don't like something, 3-finger tap if you want to bring it back. Let's do this one again. I think that looks good. I'm going to actually rotate the whole thing here because I got a bit cattywampus. I think that will work. All right. Now with the same brush, I'm going to increase the size up to about 13%. Let me zoom in here so that you can see this a little bit better. And for this first flower that we're going to make, I'm going to start out with light pressure, then heavy pressure, and back to light pressure. Light, heavy, light. And we're going to make these circular petals, sort of circular oval. Light, heavy, light. And I'm using the stem as a sort of guide here. I'll do the first one at the top, one on either side, and then 2 down below here. Okay, off to a good start. Now we'll do the next one. If you're like me, you tend to want to fix everything and make it perfect. But the whole point of these is to be sort of loose and fun and casual. So don't give yourself too many 2-finger undos. Okay, I'm pretty happy with those. There's a small gap here. Let me zoom in so that you can see it that I don't like. So to fix it, I'm going to go into my blender brush, my smudge tool, and I'm going to grab the super soft blender. If you don't have the Watercolor Magic set, you could use a soft air brush that's native to Procreate. So I'm going to use this at a pretty small size. This one is a very soft blender, so I use it at full strength usually. We'll just go in there and blend that color in. That looks good. I'm happy with that. Maybe one in there. Okay, zoom back out again. Now back to the brush. And I'm going to go back down to around 7. And I'm going to add in some leaves. And to do that, long stroke and then back, and I'm going to leave a gap for the leaves on this flower. So lighter, heavier, lighter, and reverse. I think that gives a really pretty leaf. We'll go ahead and add a few more leaves in here. These aren't based on real flowers necessarily, so there's really no right or wrong about where the flowers go or the shape of the petals or what the leaves look like. It's just sort of free-flowing and up to you. So I say mix and match, add any kind of leaf you like, wherever you like. All right, zoom out. That looks pretty good. I think we need one more in here. All right, I'm happy with that. Now, just so that you know, this is larger than it will be in the final arrangement or wildflower garden. I always make things bigger because I always have the option to go smaller, but if you go larger, you can pixelate and lose some of the quality. So always draw or paint larger than you intend if you think you might want to resize it at all. So we'll start out with that one. We're good to go. Turn that one off, go up to the next layer. Now we're going to stay with the DuoColor Bleeding Edge Blooms brush here, but we're going to switch color palette here. So let's go with this second pairing. So that's that peachy corally color there. Switch boxes, grab the darker shade, which is now selected in our circle. And we're going to stick with that 7 size for our stems. With light pressure, just draw a few stems. And here again, there's no right or wrong, it's entirely up to you. We're going to increase our brush size up to about 13% again for the flowers. I'll zoom in a little bit. This time we're going to do something, whoops, I accidentally erased my stem there. 3 fingers to redo, 2 fingers to undo. I'm going to do a pointy petal in this case. So, and again, same thing, light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. Now we'll do one this way, and this way. And again, I'm sort of using that stem as a guide for where my petals should go. All right, good to go on number 1. Let's do one here. We'll angle it slightly differently. Make it a little bit smaller overall. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure to get that taper and the color variation. Okay, and number 3 now. I'm sure you're not surprised that I'm doing 3. If you've watched my videos, you know I hate even numbers of things, generally speaking. All right, so that's a nice little grouping for this flower here. Now I'm going to switch back to the DuoColor Splotchy. I'm going to actually reverse the color order. So I'm going to grab that lighter shade, the sort of corally pink, and I'm going to use it to do the center. So if I go heavy, I get the darker color, and then I'll come back in and do the lighter shade. And you can lift your pencil on this one, it doesn't matter since we're sort of getting a variation. We're not really blending the colors, we're doing a variation between the two. So it sort of gives a brightness at the center of the flower. The bullseye for the bee. All right, zoom out again. Now I'm going to switch back to the Bleeding Edge Blooms brush. I'm going to stick with that size 13%, somewhere in there. I'm going to flip my colors back. I'm going to make some pretty leaves here. So heavy. And then on the way back, I'm going to stay with a lighter touch to give a color variation to the leaf. So it adds a little dimension to it. So heavy, light, and then light on the way back. And you can see the way it gives that two-tone effect to the leaf. And here again, just add a leaf wherever you like. I decided on this project to stick with similar tones, even for the leaves, although they wouldn't look this way in real life. But I think it makes a nice effect to have everything sort of in the same color family. But if you have your heart set on green stems and green leaves, then go for it. Zoom out. That looks pretty good. I think I'm happy with that. And let's go ahead and turn that one off and go to the next one. All right, sticking with that same Bleeding Edge Blooms brush. And I'm going to the next color pairing here. So the pink, switch boxes up here and go with this sort of deep purpley plum sort of color. And we'll go down to about size 7 for our stems. Zoom out. All right, I'm going to grab my eraser and just clean up that little bit there. I know they're loose florals, but that was bugging me. And while we're at it, we'll grab the blender and blend that just a little bit. Okay, now my OCD is satisfied. All right, back to the brush. We're going to bring our size back up to 13. This time we're going to make a flower that's a little bit more like a bud or a side view of a flower. And again, using the light pressure and heavy pressure. So we'll just do 3, and it's sort of like one of those upright bud flowers that hasn't fully opened yet. And again, here you can vary the size. Light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure. How many times have you all heard me say that? All right, that gives us some pretty flowers there. I think for this one, we're going to make sort of a very simple, just a stroke leaf. You won't get as much color variation with this one because the pressure is almost the same the whole way. And again, add leaves wherever you feel like you need them or want them. Okay. I think that is good for that flower. All right, we have one more flower, so new layer. Bleeding Edge Blooms brush still. We're going to go to our next color pairing here. So there's a very pale pink, switch boxes, and grab this sort of, it's more of a bluey purple in this case. So that's the dominant one up there in the circle. And for this flower, we're going to do some fairly long, oops. Let's bring our size back down to 7. That was too heavy for sure. This flower is more narrow. Clean this up a little bit down here. And I got it wonky, so I'm going to rotate it just a little bit to straighten it up. Okay, sticking with our Bleeding Edge Blooms brush, we're going to bring the size up to 13. This is a fairly simple flower. Just decide how tall you want it to be. And then start drawing little circles. And you can vary the pressure and you can see that you'll get the DuoColor effect. This flower is, I guess, a little bit like a hyacinth or something in that family. Lavender even, something along those lines. And you'll create, overall it'll be a sort of vaguely tapered or pyramid shape. So this one will probably make a little bit smaller. Looks good. And now one over here. You can vary the size of the little circles a bit to add more texture if you like. Again, this is a really simple flower. There's almost no way to go wrong with this. All right, I think that's good. Now we're going to bring our size back down to 7. We're going to do some very long, sort of spiky leaves. Just a little bit of extra pressure in the middle to get that secondary color coming in. This adds a nice another element. And feel free to overlap your leaves wherever you like. Okay, I think that one's good. Now that we've got a few flowers under our belt, let's work on some foliage. Okay, so we're on that next layer. Still on the Bleeding Edge Blooms brush. I'm going to switch colors again. Let's go for this pale, it's almost a lavender color. And then this sort of medium toned purple. The darker colors selected in my circle. My size is at 7. And I'm going to do a little too long. I'm going to do sort of a waving frond. Going to bring it up to 13. And then do a long, slightly curving. Again, using the pressure to get the variation in the size and the color. This is sort of loosely based. This is sort of loosely based on a fern, I guess, something like that. So I'm going to keep the leaves coming out at the same point. I'm going to vary them up by having them angle different ways. Some of them can go more straight, some of them can curve in, some of them can curve down. They can cross over. And generally, I like to make them a little bit larger as I go down. All right. That one looks good. I think I'm happy with that one. So, and again, we'll turn it off, move to the next layer. Sticking with our same brush, the DuoColor Bleeding Edge Blooms, I'm going to lower the size to 7. Switch to the next color palette. This one's a little bit more gray, similar to the previous pairing. First color is a little bit more pink. Second color has a little more gray to it. And the darker color is selected in the circle up here. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to make it quite branchy. So go ahead and just have your branches coming out wherever you like them. You can have branches coming off of branches. Whatever looks good to you. Let's start there. We can always add more if we need to. Now to do this leaf, I'm going to actually switch brushes. I'm going to go to the Bleeding Outline Blooms brush. And this one I've got at 13%. And for these leaves, I'm going to start at the top and then widen out at the bottom and then taper back. Again, these aren't necessarily based on any real leaf in nature, just a shape that struck my fancy. So light pressure, heavier pressure, circle around and end up back where you started. And again, you can vary the angle and the size of these. Heavy, light, heavy, or I'm sorry, light, heavy, and back to light again. And you can add more leaves as you feel you need them. I'm going to fill in some here. So I'm going to switch my brush back. It's still at that 7% size. So I can add in a few more branches where I feel like I need to fill in a bit. All right, let's fill those in. Switching brushes back to the Bleeding Outline Blooms brush, still at the 13%. Light, heavy, light. Light, heavy, light. Tapered at the top and then widening out down lower. Varying the sizes to create interest. I feel like I need one more in here, maybe one in here. Let's add a little bit more. I think that'll do it. So a couple more leaves. The nice thing about Procreate is that it remembers the size you used last for each brush while you're working on a project, so we don't have to reset it each time. All right. I think that looks pretty good. We'll go with that one. Again, turning that one off, grabbing the next one. I'm going to give us a few more layers here. I'm going to switch back to the Bleeding Edge Blooms brush. And the next color palette, we'll go with this. It's like a darker pinky coral color. Switching boxes and then going with this darker reddish tone, which is selected up in the circle. And for this one, again, we're going to do some branches. Fairly simple one this time. And again, I think I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I got myself a little bit out of whack. All right, back to the brushes. Now I'm going to switch back to that Bleeding Outline Blooms brush. That 13%, which it remembered from last time, is good. And in this case, we're going to do some rounded sort of blotches as leaves all down the stems here. And the whole point is just to get some different textures and shapes and to create interest in our finished wildflower garden when we assemble it. So feel free to vary these up if you're looking for something different. There's really no right or wrong here, it's just personal taste. And I'm just alternating these as I go along from one side to the next and staggering them so that they're not on the same level. All right, I think that's good. All right, now comes the fun part, the assembly. Hey everyone, because this video is so long, I'm actually going to split it into two. So stay tuned. I am posting them both at the same time so you'll be able to complete the project, but I'll actually do the assembly of the wildflower garden in the next video now that we've done all the pieces apart. So look forward to seeing you there in part 2. Thanks so much and have a great day.